Her ex pushed her onto train tracks. A Hell's Angel pulled her up as train roared in. The rain fell in a steady rhythm, each drop a cold reminder of Eva West's exhaustion. Her shoes squeaked against the wet pavement as she made her way home from another draining day at the accounting firm. The streetlights cast long shadows across the puddles, making the familiar path seem somehow different, more threatening. Eva pulled her coat tighter around herself, trying to ward off both the chill and the memories that wouldn't leave her alone. Today had been particularly hard. Her boss had criticized her work, something that wouldn't have bothered her years ago. But now every criticism felt like Jake's voice in her head, telling her she wasn't good enough. "You're so stupid, Eva," Jake used to say, whenever she made the smallest mistake. "You'd be nothing without me. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today." Now back to the story. She shook her head, droplets of water falling from her damp hair. 5 months had passed since she'd finally found the courage to leave him, but his words still echoed in her mind like a broken record. Her fingers absently traced the thin scar on her wrist, a permanent reminder of the night things had gone too far. The night she'd finally realized she had to get out. The sound of a passing car made her jump. Eva took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She wasn't that scared woman anymore, she reminded herself. She had her own apartment now, a safe place where Jake couldn't reach her. But sometimes, like tonight, when she was tired and the rain made everything look darker, it was hard to believe in her own strength. Her shoes were soaked through now, each step accompanied by an uncomfortable squish. She should have taken the bus, but she'd needed the walk today, needed the time to clear her head after Mrs. Patterson had snapped at her about a missing decimal point in the quarterly report. Such a small thing, but it had sent Eva spiraling into memories of Jake's rages over equally minor issues. "I'm not there anymore," she whispered to herself, her breath visible in the cool evening air. "I'm not that person anymore." But even as she said the words, she felt the familiar tightness in her chest. The sidewalk ahead curved toward the train station, its fluorescent lights creating a harsh glow against the rainy darkness. The station was usually busy, but tonight it seemed eerily quiet. Her footsteps echoed off the concrete walls as she approached. A laugh from somewhere behind her made her stomach drop. She knew that laugh. How many times had she heard it just before Jake's mood would shift, before his charming smile would twist into something cruel? Eva's steps faltered, her wet shoes sliding slightly on the slick pavement. Well, well. The voice she'd been dreading cut through the sound of falling rain. "Look who it is!" Eva's entire body went rigid. The fear she'd been fighting all these months came rushing back, flooding her system with ice-cold dread. She could hear his footsteps now, the heavy tread she'd learned to recognize long ago. Jake's presence filled the space behind her, as suffocating as ever. She stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat, the rain running down her face like tears she refused to shed. The train station lights flickered above, casting shifting shadows that seemed to dance around her feet. All her progress, all her careful steps toward healing, seemed to crumble in the face of his anger-filled voice. Eva slowly turned to face Jake, her heart hammering against her ribs. The fluorescent lights of the station cast harsh shadows across his face, making his features look more severe than she remembered. His eyes, once warm and inviting during their early dating days, now burned with an anger that made her want to shrink into herself. "You think you can just walk away from me?" Jake's voice was low, dangerous. He took a step closer, and Eva instinctively moved backward. "After everything I've done for you?" The platform was mostly empty, just a few distant figures hurrying through the rain, too far away to notice what was happening. Eva's wet shoes slipped slightly on the smooth concrete as she tried to maintain distance between them. "Jake, please," she whispered, hating how small her voice sounded. "It's over. We both need to move on." His laugh was sharp, cutting through the sound of falling rain. "Move on? You destroyed everything we had!" He jabbed a finger toward her chest, making her step back again. "You're nothing without me, Eva, nothing." The edge of the platform was getting closer. Eva could feel it behind her heels, that dangerous drop-off into the tracks below. Her hands trembled as she held them up in front of her, a futile gesture of protection. "I took care of you," Jake continued, his words coming faster now, more heated. "I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me?" He moved forward again, his shoes squeaking on the wet platform. "By running away like a coward?" Eva felt the heel of her shoe touch the yellow warning strip at the platform's edge. "Jake, stop! You're scaring me." "Scaring you?" His face contorted with rage. "You haven't seen scary yet." His hands shot out, shoving her shoulders hard. Eva's arms windmilled as she tried to keep her balance, but her wet shoes provided no grip. "Jake, no!" The words came out as a terrified gasp as she teetered on the edge. Below her, the train tracks gleamed dully in the rain. His face was a mask of pure hatred now. "You want to leave me? Fine." His hands connected with her shoulders again, harder this time. "Leave!" The push sent Eva backward into empty air. Her stomach lurched as she fell, landing hard on the tracks below. Pain shot through her hip and elbow where they struck the rail. Above her, Jake's figure was dark against the station lights, watching as she struggled to get up. The sound came then, a deep, resonating horn blast that she felt in her bones. The track, beneath her, began to vibrate. Eva's rain-soaked clothes felt impossibly heavy as she tried to push herself up, her hands slipping on the wet rails. The train's headlight burst around the corner, illuminating everything in harsh white light. Eva's throat closed with panic as the screech of brakes filled the air. She couldn't get up. She couldn't move fast enough. Just as the train's roar became deafening, something strong clamped around her arm. A massive hand gripped her firmly, and with one powerful yank she was airborne again, this time moving up instead of down. Eva felt herself being pulled clear of the tracks, the wind from the passing train whipping at her clothes as she landed safely on the platform, held steady by her unknown rescuer. Eva's heart thundered in her chest as she looked up at her rescuer, rain streaming down her face. The platform lights cast a halo around his massive frame, making him seem almost unreal. Her vision swam as she tried to focus, still dizzy from the fall and the rush of adrenaline coursing through her body. The man who'd saved her was unlike anyone she'd ever seen up close. His leather vest bore the unmistakable patches of the Hells Angels, and tattoos covered his exposed arms like a tapestry of dark ink. His thick beard was peppered with gray, and deep lines marked his weathered face. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, sharp and alert, yet not unkind. She became aware that his hand was still gripping her arm, keeping her steady. The strength in those fingers was obvious, but his hold wasn't painful. It was secure, grounding. Eva tried to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. Her legs felt like jelly beneath her, and she swayed slightly. The big man's other hand came up to stabilize her shoulder. "Easy," he rumbled, his voice as rough as his appearance. The single word carried both command and concern. Eva glanced around frantically, suddenly remembering Jake. But he was gone, had probably run the moment her rescuer appeared. The thought of Jake made her shudder, and the stranger must have felt it because his grip tightened slightly in response. The train that had nearly ended her life was already disappearing around the bend, its rhythmic clacking fading into the distance. The platform had emptied completely now. Even the few distant figures from before had vanished in the commotion. Rain continued to fall steadily, soaking through her clothes and making her shiver. Her hip throbbed where she'd hit the rail, and her elbow stung. The man, she couldn't help but think of him as a bear given his size, seemed to notice her discomfort. His eyes scanned over her, checking for obvious injuries. With surprising gentleness, he helped her find her footing. His movements were careful but efficient, like someone used to handling delicate situations with strength. Ava's legs trembled as she put weight on them, but they held. "You good?" he asked, his voice gravelly but quiet. The question was simple, direct, but somehow it contained layers of meaning. Was she hurt? Was she safe? Did she need help? Ava managed to find her voice at last. "Yes," she whispered, then cleared her throat to speak more clearly. "Thank you. You saved my life." The big man's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. He gave a slight nod and began to turn away, his boots heavy on the wet platform. "Wait," Ava called out, the word escaping before she could stop it. He paused, looking back at her over his shoulder. "I mean, thank you, really." He studied her for a moment longer, rain dripping from his beard, then turned and walked away. His figure quickly disappeared into the rainy darkness, leaving Eva alone on the platform, alive and shaking, but somehow feeling safer than she had in a long time. Eva slid into a corner booth at Mel's all-night diner, as far from the windows as possible. The vinyl seat squeaked beneath her wet clothes, and she wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop shivering. Her coffee arrived quickly. The waitress must have seen something in her face that spoke of urgency. The ceramic mug warmed her cold hands, but they wouldn't stop trembling. Every time the bell above the diner's door chimed, she flinched. The fluorescent lights felt too bright after the darkness of the train platform, making everything seem harsh and surreal. She took a sip of coffee, letting the warmth spread through her chest. The events of the last hour played on repeat in her mind. Jake's angry face, the horrible moment of falling, the strong hand that had pulled her to safety. Her hip still ached where she'd hit the rail. With shaking fingers, she pulled out her phone. She needed to hear a friendly voice, someone who would understand. The number was on speed dial, and Molly picked up on the second ring. "Ava? What's wrong?" Molly's voice was instantly alert, despite the late hour. She'd always been able to read Eva's moods, even through the phone. "Jake." Eva's voice cracked. She took another sip of coffee to steady herself. "He found me at the train station. He pushed me onto the tracks, Molly." "Oh my God!" Molly's gasp was sharp and frightened. "Are you okay? Where are you now? Do you need me to call the police?" "I'm okay. Someone pulled me up in time." Ava glanced around the diner again, nervous. "I'm at Mel's right now. I didn't know where else to go." "Listen to me," Molly said firmly. "You're not going back to your apartment tonight. I'm coming to get you. No arguments. You're staying with me." Ava started to protest, but Molly cut her off. "Eva West, don't you dare say you'll be fine. He pushed you onto train tracks. This isn't something you can just brush off." Tears welled up in Ava's eyes at her friend's fierce protectiveness. "Okay," she whispered. "Thank you. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't move." After hanging up, Ava checked her phone messages. Her heart sank. Jake had already sent several texts, each one more threatening than the last. "Where did you go? Answer me. You think you can just run away? You're nothing without me. Nothing. You'll regret this." The messages kept coming, one after another. Eva's hands started shaking so badly she had to put the phone down. The coffee in her stomach turned sour, and the diner's bright lights suddenly felt exposing rather than comforting. When Molly's car pulled up outside, Eva nearly ran to it. Her friend's familiar face, creased with worry, was the most welcome sight she'd ever seen. "Let's get your stuff from your apartment," Molly said, as Eva buckled in. "You can stay with me as long as you need to." The drive to Eva's apartment was tense. She ran inside quickly, throwing some clothes and essentials into a bag while Molly stood guard at the door. More messages from Jake had arrived, each one making her move faster. As they drove away from her apartment, Eva stared out the window at the rain-slick streets. The thought of Jake's rage, his messages, his threats, it all pressed down on her like a physical weight. How much longer could she keep running? How many more times would she have to hide? Molly's apartment was warm and familiar, filled with soft lamplight and the smell of chamomile tea. Eva sat cross-legged on the couch, wrapped in her friend's fuzzy purple blanket, while Molly perched in her favorite armchair nearby. "I still can't believe Jake would do something like that," Molly said, her hands tight around her tea mug. "I mean, I can believe it, but pushing you onto train tracks? That's attempted murder, Eva." Eva stared into her own cup of tea, watching the steam rise. If that man hadn't been there... She trailed off, remembering the strength in those tattooed hands as they'd pulled her to safety. "He just appeared out of nowhere, like some kind of guardian angel." "A Hell's Angel as a guardian angel?" Molly raised an eyebrow. "That's quite the image. Did you get his name?" "No." Eva shook her head. "He barely said 2 words to me. Just asked if I was okay and left." She took a careful sip of tea. But there was something about him. Under all those tattoos and that tough exterior, I don't know. He seemed different. "Different how?" "The way he looked at me," Eva said slowly, trying to put the feeling into words. "Not with pity or judgment. Just understanding, maybe? Like he knew what it was like to be scared and alone?" Molly leaned forward. "Well, that's more words than you've said about any man since Jake. Should I be worried?" "Molly!" Eva felt her cheeks warm. "He saved my life. Of course I'm thinking about him, wouldn't you?" "Mm-hmm." Molly's tone was teasing, but her eyes were serious. "Just be careful, okay? I know you're grateful, but Hell's Angels aren't exactly known for their stable lifestyle." Eva pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I'll probably never see him. Again, anyway." But even as she said it, she couldn't help wondering about him. What was his story? What had put that look of understanding in his eyes? "You're doing it again?" Molly said softly. "Doing what?" "That thing where you get lost in your head." Molly set her mug down and moved to sit beside Eva on the couch. "Talk to me. What are you really thinking?" Eva was quiet for a long moment. "I'm thinking how strange it is that a complete stranger showed me more kindness in 2 minutes than Jake did in 2 years." Her voice cracked a little. "And I'm thinking about how tired I am of being afraid all the time." Molly wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You don't have to be afraid here. You're safe with me." They talked late into the night about everything and nothing, about Jake's escalating behavior, about Eva's fears, about the mysterious stranger who'd saved her. Molly listened, offered advice, and most importantly, just let Eva talk. As the night wore on, Eva's eyes grew heavy. Molly brought her a pillow and an extra blanket, making sure she was comfortable on the couch. "Get some sleep," Molly said, giving her a gentle hug. "We'll figure everything out tomorrow." Eva snuggled down into the makeshift bed, feeling the tension slowly leave her body. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt truly safe. The soft ticking of Molly's wall clock and the familiar shadows of her friend's living room were comforting rather than threatening. As she drifted off to sleep, her last thoughts weren't of Jake or his threats, but of a pair of kind eyes beneath a rugged exterior and hands strong enough to pull her from danger. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the Daily Grind coffee shop, creating warm patches of light on the worn wooden floors. Ava pushed open the glass door, the little bell above tingling softly. She'd barely slept at Molly's place, and her body craved caffeine like a lifeline. The familiar scent of freshly ground coffee beans wrapped around her, but as she stepped toward the counter, something made her pause. There, in the corner by the window, sat her rescuer from the night before. His large frame seemed almost too big for the small cafe chair, his leather vest standing out among the morning crowd of office workers and students. Ava's heart skipped a beat. He looked different in the daylight, still intimidating with his full beard and tattoos, but somehow less mysterious, more human. The sun caught the silver in his beard and the edges of his leather vest, softening his rough edges. Their eyes met across the room. Jonas straightened slightly in his chair, his coffee cup pausing halfway to his mouth. For a moment, neither of them moved. The busy chatter of the coffee shop seemed to fade away, leaving them in a bubble of awkward recognition. He gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. Ava felt her cheeks warm as she returned the gesture, then quickly turned to the counter. Her hands trembled, slightly, as she ordered her usual vanilla latte. While waiting for her drink, Ava couldn't help stealing glances at Jonas. He'd gone back to his coffee, but she noticed how he sat facing the door, his posture alert despite his relaxed appearance. His eyes occasionally scanned the room, a habit, she guessed, from years of watching his back. "Vanilla latte for Ava," the barista called out. Ava collected her drink, the warmth of the cup steadying her hands. She should just leave, she told herself. Thank him again, maybe, but then go. Yet her feet seemed to have other ideas, carrying her toward his table. Jonas looked up as she approached. Up close, she could see the deep lines around his eyes, speaking of both laughter and hardship. His hands, rough and calloused, dwarfed his coffee cup. "Hi," Eva said softly, clutching her latte like a shield. "Morning," he replied, his voice as gravelly as she remembered from the night before. A moment of silence stretched between them. Ava shifted her weight from one foot to the other, while Jonas seemed content to wait. "I just wanted to thank you again. For last night," she managed finally. "I don't know what would have happened if—" He held up a hand, stopping her. "No need." His eyes, a surprising shade of warm brown, met hers. "You doing all right?" The simple question, asked without pity or judgment, made her throat tight. Ava nodded, not trusting her voice for a moment. "Yes, I'm okay. Thank you." She turned to leave, but something made her pause. There was something about him, maybe the way he asked if she was all right, or how his eyes held hers without demanding anything in return. A connection she couldn't explain, hadn't expected, and wasn't sure she wanted to examine too closely. With a final nod, Eva headed for the door, the bell tinkling behind her as she stepped out into the morning sunshine. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk as Ava made her way home from work. Her shoulders ached from hunching over her desk all day, and her feet hurt in her sensible work shoes. All she wanted was a hot shower and a quiet evening with her latest mystery novel. But as she rounded the corner to her street, her heart stopped. There he was, Jake, leaning against the brick wall of her apartment building. His familiar posture, hands in his pockets and one foot propped against the wall, sent chills down her spine. He was wearing the blue button-down shirt she'd bought him last Christmas, now wrinkled and untucked. Eva's steps faltered. She considered turning around, finding somewhere else to go, maybe calling Molly again. But no. This was her home. She wouldn't let him chase her away from her own apartment. Taking a deep breath, she straightened her spine and kept walking. With each step, her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to maintain a steady pace. Not too fast, not too slow. Don't show fear, she told herself. Jake spotted her when she was about 20 feet away. Hyru pushed himself off the wall, his face twisting into that familiar smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Ava," he called out, his voice carrying across the evening air. "We need to talk." She kept walking, her eyes fixed on the building's entrance just past him. Her keys were already in her hand, held between her fingers like her self-defense class had taught her. "Come on, baby," Jake said, his voice dropping to that wheedling tone she knew too well. "Don't be like this. I just want to talk about what happened." Ava was close enough now to smell his cologne, the same brand he'd worn throughout their relationship. Her stomach churned. She moved to walk past him, but he stepped into her path. "Move, Jake," she said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "Not until you talk to me." His tone hardened, the fake sweetness evaporating. "You can't keep avoiding me forever." Eva sidestepped him, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. She made it to the building's entrance, her hands trembling as she unlocked the door. "Eva!" Jake's voice rose, angry now. "Don't you dare walk away from me!" She pulled the door open and slipped inside, letting it slam behind her. Through the glass, she could see Jake's face contorted with rage. He stood there for a long moment, staring at her, before finally turning and walking away. Eva practically ran up the stairs to her third-floor apartment. Once inside, she locked the door, slid the chain into place, and leaned against it, trying to catch her breath. Hours later, after a shower and a barely touched dinner, Eva's phone buzzed. Her hand shook as she picked it up, already knowing who it would be. The message from Jake read, "You better meet with me tomorrow, or you're not going to like what happens next. Don't test me, Eva. You know what I'm capable of." Eva's phone slipped from her trembling fingers onto the couch. Her chest felt tight, like she couldn't get enough air. She pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself small, as the anxiety she'd been fighting all day finally overwhelmed her. How much longer could she keep avoiding him? What would he do next? Eva's phone buzzed again, making her jump. She stared at it warily, dreading another message from Jake. But when she picked it up, she saw an unfamiliar number instead. "It's Jonas," the text read, "from the train station. Saw you with that guy earlier. You okay?" Eva blinked at the screen, surprised. She hadn't given Jonas her number. As if reading her mind, another message appeared. "Got your number from Molly. Hope that's all right." Of course, Molly worked at the coffee shop where she'd seen Jonas that morning. Eva's fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure how to respond. "I'm okay," she typed finally. "Just shaken up." "Want to grab a drink? Seems like you could use one. No pressure?" Eva stared at the message. Her first instinct was to say no. After all, she barely knew him. But something about his presence made her feel safe. Maybe it was because he'd already saved her life once. Or maybe it was the way he'd kept his distance, never pushing or demanding anything from her. "Okay," she replied, before she could talk herself out of it. "Where?" They agreed to meet at Murphy's, a quiet bar a few blocks from her apartment. Eva changed into jeans and a sweater, trying to ignore the trembling in her hands as she got ready. When she arrived, Jonas was already there, sitting at a corner table away from the crowd. He stood when he saw her, his massive frame drawing a few curious glances from other patrons. Despite his intimidating appearance, the leather vest, the tattoos peeking out from under his sleeves, his eyes were kind. "Thanks for coming," he said, pulling out a chair for her. "Wasn't sure you would." Ava sat down, wrapping her hands around the glass of water already waiting for her. "I wasn't sure either," she admitted. They ordered drinks, a beer for him, a glass of wine for her. Jonas didn't push her to talk, letting a comfortable silence settle between them. It was different from Jake's silences, which had always felt loaded with tension and unspoken threats. "That guy," Jonas finally said, his voice low and steady. "He's the reason you were on those tracks that night, isn't he?" Ava nodded, taking a long sip of wine. "His name is Jake. We were together for 3 years." The words came easier than she expected. He wasn't always like this. Or maybe he was, and I just didn't see it." Jonas listened quietly as Ava talked about how Jake had slowly isolated her from friends and family, how his criticism had chipped away at her confidence until she barely recognized herself anymore. She told him about the night she finally left, after Jake had thrown a glass at her head during an argument. "I thought leaving would be the end of it," she said, staring into her wine glass. "But he won't let go." Jonas nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I get it. Had my own demons to fight." He rolled up his sleeve, revealing a faded track mark scar. "Spent 5 years destroying myself and everyone around me. The angels. They gave me a purpose when I needed one, but they came with their own kind of chains." "How did you break free?" Ava asked. "Still working on it," Jonas admitted. "But I learned something important. You can't move forward if you're always looking back. The past, it'll eat you alive if you let it." Eva let his words sink in, feeling their weight. For the first time in months, she felt understood. Not just heard, but truly understood. The morning sun did little to warm Ava as she walked to work. Her conversation with Jonas from the night before had left her feeling both lighter and heavier. Lighter because she'd finally shared her story. Heavier because she knew the truth of his words about letting go of the past. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice Jake until he was right in front of her. He stepped out from between 2 parked cars, blocking her path on the sidewalk. Her heart jumped into her throat. "Finally," Jake said, his voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I've been trying to talk to you for days." He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. "Why are you making this so difficult?" Eva tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. People walked past, some glancing their way but nobody stopping. Her chest felt tight, making it hard to breathe. "Let go of me," she whispered. "Not until you listen," Jake hissed, pulling her closer. "You're being ridiculous, Eva. You know we belong together. Stop fighting it." Something inside Eva snapped. Maybe it was Jonas's words from last night, or maybe she'd finally reached her breaking point. "No!" she shouted, surprising herself with the force of her voice. "Let go of me! I don't want to be with you anymore!" Jake's face darkened. He yanked her arm harder, making her stumble. "Lower your voice," he warned. "You're embarrassing yourself." "I said let go." Eva's voice grew stronger. "Leave me alone. I'm done with you, Jake." His other hand shot out, grabbing her shoulder and shoving her against the brick wall of the nearest building. "You ungrateful little—" She said let go. The deep, gravelly voice came from behind Jake. Eva saw Jake's eyes widen as a large shadow fell over them both. Jonas stood there, his presence commanding and intimidating. Jake's grip loosened slightly, but he didn't let go. "This is none of your business," he spat. "I'm making it my business." Jonas stepped closer, his face hard. "Let her go." Jake hesitated, his fingers flexing on Eva's arm. For a moment, she thought he might try to fight. But then Jonas moved forward, placing himself between them and physically pushing Jake's hands away from Eva. Jake stumbled backward, his face twisted with rage. "This isn't over," he snarled, but his voice shook slightly. He looked from Jonas to Eva, then turned and stormed off down the street. Eva's legs gave out, and she sagged against the wall. Her whole body trembled as the adrenaline coursed through her system. She could still feel Jake's fingers digging into her arm, could still see the hatred in his eyes. Jonas stood nearby, watching Jake disappear around the corner. He didn't touch Eva or crowd her space, seeming to understand that she needed a moment to collect herself. "You okay?" he asked finally, his voice gentler now. Eva nodded, though tears threatened to spill from her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what would have happened if—" "Don't think about that," Jonas cut in. "You're safe. That's what matters." Eva wrapped her arms around herself, still shaking. She felt both terrified and oddly empowered. She'd finally stood up to Jake, found her voice. Even though it had nearly ended badly, she'd done it. She wasn't the same scared, silent woman she'd been before. Eva's hands shook as she locked her apartment door behind her. She leaned against it, sliding down until she sat on the floor, her legs too weak to hold her up anymore. The morning's confrontation with Jake played over and over in her mind, like a bad movie she couldn't turn off. Sunlight streamed through her living room window, catching dust particles dancing in the air. Her apartment felt different somehow, smaller, less safe. She could still feel the rough brick wall against her back, still hear Jake's threats echoing in her ears. But something else echoed too. Her own voice, stronger than she'd heard it in years. She'd stood up to him. Finally, after all this time, she'd found the courage to say no. Eva pulled herself up and walked to her kitchen counter, where her phone lay charging. She stared at it for a long moment, her finger hovering over Jonas's number. He'd given it to her last night at the bar, scratching it onto a napkin with a worn-down pen. "If you need anything," he'd said, sliding it across the table. "Day or night." Before she could talk herself out of it, Eva picked up her phone and dialed. It rang 3 times before his deep voice answered. "Eva?" "Hi," she said softly. I was wondering if we could talk?" There was a pause, and she heard the sound of machinery stopping in the background. "Sure. You okay?" "Yes, no, I don't know." Eva wrapped her free arm around herself. "After what happened this morning, I just need someone to talk to." "Meet me at Wilson Park in 20 minutes, by the fountain?" Eva agreed, and soon found herself walking through the familiar paths of the local park. The afternoon was warm, and families dotted the grass with picnic blankets. Children's laughter floated on the breeze, a stark contrast to the turmoil in her heart. Jonas was already there when she arrived, sitting on a wooden bench near the fountain. He wore dark jeans and a black t-shirt that showed his tattoos, but somehow he didn't look as intimidating as he had that first night at the train station. "Thanks for coming," Eva said, sitting beside him. Jonas nodded, his eyes scanning the park before settling on her. "Want to talk about what's on your mind?" Eva watched the water cascade down the fountain's tears. "I keep thinking about how I froze this morning. How if you hadn't shown up—" She shook her head. "I thought I was stronger than that." "Strength isn't about never being afraid," Jonas said quietly. "It's about what you do with that fear." "Is that what you did? With your past?" Jonas was quiet for a long moment, his large hands clasped between his knees. "I used to be like him, you know. Like Jake." His voice was rough with emotion. "Young, angry, looking for someone to blame for my pain, got into drugs, started fights, Hurt people who tried to help me?" Eva turned to look at him, surprised by his openness. "I was lost," he continued, "filled with so much rage I couldn't see straight. The gang became my family because I'd destroyed everything else in my life." He paused, watching a group of pigeons scatter near their feet. It took hitting rock bottom to realize I was becoming everything I hated. "What changed?" "I did," Jonas said simply. "Got clean. Started facing my demons instead of drowning them in alcohol and violence. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it." He turned to face her fully. "I'll help keep you safe from Jake, Eva. But the real strength has to come from you. You showed some of it this morning. Standing up to him, finding your voice. That's just the beginning." Eva sat in Dr. Sarah Chen's office, her fingers tracing the worn leather arms of the comfortable chair she'd come to know over the past few weeks. Sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains, casting a soft glow on the peaceful space filled with plants and calming artwork. "How are you feeling today, Eva?" Dr. Chen asked, her kind eyes studying Eva's face. "Better, I think." Eva straightened her shoulders, noticing how she no longer hunched forward like she used to. "I caught myself smiling in the mirror this morning. I can't remember the last time I did that." Dr. Chen nodded encouragingly. "That's wonderful progress. How are you handling the daily activities we discussed?" "I've been going to that coffee shop we talked about, the one near work." Eva's voice grew stronger. "I ordered something different every day this week, just like you suggested. It sounds silly, but making my own choices, even small ones, it helps." "It's not silly at all. Building confidence starts with small steps." Their session continued, Eva opening up about her fears, her hopes, the way she was learning to trust her own judgment again. But as they wrapped up, her expression darkened. "Jake left another letter at work yesterday," she admitted, her hands clasping tightly in her lap. "The receptionist found it on my desk before I got in." Dr. Chen leaned forward. "What did you do with it?" "I added it to the file, like you said. Didn't open it." Eva pulled out her phone, showing a folder of screenshots. "He's been posting things about me online too, horrible things. My coworkers have seen them." She scrolled through messages Jake had sent, each one more threatening than the last. "He waited outside the office building on Tuesday. Just standing there, watching." "Have you contacted the police again?" Eva nodded, running a hand through her hair. "They said they're building a case, but without proof that he's actually done something." She trailed off, frustration evident in her voice. "Keep documenting everything," Dr. Chen advised. "And remember, you're stronger than you think. I see it in every session, how far you've come." Later that evening, Eva sat at her kitchen table, organizing the week's bills. The therapy sessions were expensive, but worth every penny. She felt more like herself with each passing day, even if Jake's shadow still loomed over her life. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jonas. "Hope your session went well today. Stay strong." A small smile crossed her face as she typed back a quick, "Thank you." His support had become a steady comfort, though she was learning not to rely on it too heavily. Dr. Chen had helped her understand the importance of finding strength within herself. The sun had set, leaving her apartment bathed in the warm glow of lamplight. Eva was just about to start making dinner when her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Hello?" "Look out your window, Eva." Her blood ran cold at Jake's voice. She forced herself to move to the window, peering through the blinds. There he was, standing in the parking lot, phone to his ear, staring up at her apartment. "Miss me?" His voice dripped with malice. "We need to talk about those things you've been saying about me." Eva's hands trembled as she backed away from the window. Her heart pounded against her ribs as panic clawed at her throat. She glanced at her door, wondering if she'd remembered to slide the deadbolt into place. Ava's hands shook as she backed away from the window, Jake's threatening voice still echoing in her ears. A knock at her door made her jump. Her heart nearly stopped until she heard a familiar, deep voice. "Ava, it's Jonas. You okay in there?" Relief flooded through her as she rushed to the door, checking the peephole to confirm it was really him. Jonas stood there, his broad shoulders filling the narrow hallway, concern etched on his weathered face. She quickly undid the locks and opened the door. "I saw him down there," Jonas said, his voice low and steady. "Followed you home. Been keeping an eye out." Ava wrapped her arms around herself, torn between gratitude and embarrassment. "You didn't have to do that." "Yeah, I did." Jonas stepped inside, his presence somehow making her small apartment feel safer. "You shouldn't have to deal with this alone." Ava closed the door, sliding all 3 locks back into place. "I can handle it," she said automatically, then stopped herself. Dr. Chen's words came back to her. "Accepting help isn't weakness." Jonas didn't argue. He just stood there, patient and solid as a mountain. "Want me to leave?" Ava looked at him, really looked at him. Past the tattoos and the rough exterior, she saw genuine concern in his eyes. Thunder rumbled outside as rain began to fall, pattering against her windows. "No," she admitted quietly. "Please stay." Jonas nodded, settling into the armchair near her window. He pulled back the curtain slightly, keeping watch on the parking lot below. "He's gone now. Probably didn't like seeing me show up." Ava sank onto her couch, the adrenaline slowly draining from her system. "I'm tired of being afraid," she whispered. "So tired." "You don't have to be afraid tonight," Jonas said simply. "Get some rest. I'll keep watch." Ava wanted to protest, to insist she was fine, but the truth was she wasn't fine. The constant vigilance, the fear, it was exhausting. Having someone else shoulder that burden, even for one night, felt like a gift she hadn't known she needed. She grabbed a blanket from the back of the couch and curled up under it. The storm outside grew stronger, wind whistling past her windows. But instead of making her nervous, it felt cozy now. Safe. "Thank you," she murmured, her eyes growing heavy. "For everything." Jonas just nodded, his silhouette steady and reassuring in the dim light. Ava felt herself drifting off, the sound of rain mixing with Jonas's quiet breathing. For the first time in weeks, she didn't check her phone for messages from Jake. Didn't double-check the locks. Didn't lie awake wondering what tomorrow would bring. Instead, she let herself relax. Truly relax. The storm raged outside, but in here she was protected. Not just by Jonas's presence, but by the knowledge that she didn't have to face everything alone. Sometimes, strength meant knowing when to accept help. As sleep pulled her under, Ava's last conscious thought was how strange it was that she'd found such peace in the company of a man who looked like he belonged in a biker gang. But then again, maybe that was exactly what she needed. Someone strong enough to understand her fears, yet gentle enough to help her heal. Ava's heart stopped when she saw her apartment door slightly ajar. She'd just returned from grocery shopping, and the sight made her blood run cold. Jonas, who'd been helping her carry bags, immediately stepped in front of her. "Stay here," he said firmly, his large frame tensing as he pushed the door open. Ava's hands trembled as she waited in the hallway. After a minute, Jonas called out, "He's gone, but you should see this." She walked in slowly, noticing nothing out of place in her living room. But when Jonas led her to the bathroom, she gasped. Written in red lipstick, her own lipstick, across the mirror were the words, "You can't hide forever." "That's it," Jonas said, his voice tight with anger. "We're calling the police." Eva stared at the message, her reflection fractured by the ugly words. Usually this would be when she'd make excuses, try to minimize what was happening. But something inside her had snapped. "You're right," she said, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. "I'm done being afraid in my own home." While Eva spoke with the police, Jonas checked every room, every closet, making sure Jake wasn't still lurking somewhere. The police arrived quickly, taking photos and dusting for fingerprints. Eva answered their questions clearly, showing them the threatening texts she'd saved, describing the pattern of harassment. "I want to file for a restraining order," she told the officer, her voice stronger than she felt. After the police left, Jonas insisted on staying. He paced the small apartment like a caged bear, checking the windows, testing the locks. Eva watched him, feeling both grateful and uncertain. "I can't keep asking you to protect me," she said softly. Jonas stopped pacing and looked at her. "You're not asking. I'm choosing to be here." Eva sat on her couch, hugging a pillow to her chest. "But your life, your responsibilities, I'm disrupting everything." "Eva." Jonas sat beside her, the couch dipping under his weight. "You're not disrupting anything, if anything." He trailed off, running a hand through his beard. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Eva found herself studying his profile, the strong jaw, the slight scar above his eyebrow, the gentle way his hands rested on his knees despite their capacity for violence. "If anything, what?" she prompted. Jonas shifted uncomfortably. "If anything, you're helping me figure out what actually matters." The words hung in the air. Eva felt her heart skip, then immediately chided herself. Jonas was just being kind, doing what any decent person would do. But when she caught him looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, something warm bloomed in her chest. "I should check the back windows again," Jonas said abruptly, standing up. Eva watched him walk away, noticed the tension in his shoulders. She realized she wasn't the only one struggling with their growing closeness. Jonas might be her protector, but he was also becoming something more, something that scared them both. She touched her chest where that warm feeling lingered. After Jake, she'd sworn she'd never let another man get close enough to hurt her. But Jonas? Jonas was different. And that terrified her more than any threat Jake could make. Eva stood in her small apartment, staring at the stack of empty boxes Jonas had brought over. The morning light filtered through her curtains, casting long shadows across the floor. She wrapped her arms around herself, a habit she'd developed when feeling uncertain. "You don't have to do this," Jonas said, his deep voice gentle. He was leaning against her kitchen counter, keeping his distance like he always did, careful not to crowd her. "But that building I told you about, it's got security cameras, a doorman, and it's closer to your work." Eva picked up one of the boxes, running her fingers along its edge. "I know it makes sense," she said softly. "It's just what?" "I don't want to need help." The words came out in a rush. "I don't want to be that person who can't handle things on their own." Jonas straightened up, his expression serious. "Eva, there's a difference between needing help and accepting it when it's offered." He picked up a box and started folding it into shape. "Besides, I'm just helping you move. You're the one doing the hard part, making the decision to leave." Eva watched his large hands carefully crease the cardboard. It was strange how someone so physically imposing could be so gentle with simple tasks. She thought about his words, about the difference between needing and accepting help. "Okay," she said finally. "But I'm paying for the moving truck." A slight smile tugged at Jonas's beard. Deal. They started with the kitchen, wrapping dishes in newspaper. Ava found herself relaxing as they worked, surprised by how natural it felt to move around her small space with Jonas there. He didn't try to take over or tell her what to do. Instead, he followed her lead, asking where she wanted things packed. "These plates," Eva said, carefully wrapping her grandmother's china. "They're the only things I have from my family's house." Jonas nodded, watching as she nestled each plate in paper. Sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest memories. Eva looked up at him, touched by his understanding. "Yeah, they do." She handed him a wrapped plate, and their fingers brushed briefly. The contact sent a small shiver through her. They moved to her bookshelf next. Jonas picked up a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice, raising an eyebrow. "Don't judge," Eva said, feeling a smile spread across her face. "It's a classic." "No judgment here," he said, carefully placing it in a box. "Everyone's got their escape." Eva paused in her packing, struck by the truth in his words. "What's yours?" she asked quietly. Jonas was silent for a moment, his hands stilling on the books. "Used to be my bike, the road. Now." He shrugged, but his eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Now I'm finding other things worth staying for." The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken words. Eva felt her heart beating faster, but for once, it wasn't from fear. Jonas broke eye contact first, turning back to the books with careful focus. "You're stronger than you think, Ava," he said softly, placing another book in the box. "Moving isn't running away, it's choosing yourself." Ava blinked back unexpected tears, touched by his words. She reached for another book, her hand brushing against his again. This time, neither of them pulled away immediately. In that quiet moment, surrounded by boxes and memories, Ava felt something shift inside her, a small spark of hope, of possibility. Eva's hands trembled as she fumbled with her keys, trying to unlock her new apartment door. The hallway felt too quiet, too still. That's when she heard his footsteps, heavy, determined, familiar. Her stomach dropped. "So this is where you're hiding now?" Jake's voice cut through the silence like a knife. She turned slowly, keys clutched tightly in her palm. Jake stood there, his face twisted with rage, his body blocking the hallway. The security cameras she'd felt so safe about suddenly seemed useless. "I'm not hiding, Jake," she said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "This is my home. You need to leave." He stepped closer, his eyes dark with fury. "Your home? You think you can just walk away from everything we had? Start fresh like none of it meant anything?" "What we had wasn't real," Eva said, straightening her spine. "It was control. It was fear. That's not love, Jake." He slammed his hand against the wall beside her head, making her flinch. "You ungrateful little—" He leaned in close, his breath hot on her face. "You think you're better than me now? With your new life and your biker boyfriend?" Eva felt something snap inside her. Years of fear and anger bubbled to the surface. "Yes," she said firmly, meeting his gaze. "I am better than this. Better than living in fear of you. Better than believing your lies." Jake's face contorted. "You're nothing without me. Nothing. I made you who you are." "No." Eva's voice grew stronger with each word. "You tried to break me. You tried to make me small enough to control. But guess what? I'm still here. I'm still standing." He grabbed her arm, squeezing hard enough to bruise. "You think you can talk to me like that? After everything I did for you?" "Everything you did to me," Eva corrected, yanking her arm away. "The manipulation, the control, the fear. I remember it all, Jake. And I'm done. I'm done being afraid of you." Jake raised his hand, and Eva braced herself. But she didn't back down. "Go ahead," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Show everyone who you really are. Show them the real Jake, the one who can only feel strong by making others feel weak." His hand froze mid-air as heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Jonas appeared, his massive frame filling the space behind Jake. "I believe the lady asked you to leave," Jonas said, his voice low and dangerous. Jake spun around, his face flushing with anger and something else. Fear. He looked between Eva and Jonas, his fists clenching and unclenching. "This isn't over," he spat, but his voice had lost its edge. Jonas took a step forward, and Jake stumbled backward. "Actually," Jonas said, "it is." Eva watched as Jake retreated down the hallway, his shoulders hunched, his stride no longer confident. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. As he disappeared around the corner, Eva felt a strange mixture of emotions wash over her. Relief that he was gone, sadness for the person she once thought he was, and most surprisingly, pity for the broken man he'd revealed himself to be. She leaned against her door frame, exhausted but somehow lighter. The keys in her hand no longer felt like they were burning her palm. They felt like freedom. The evening light filtered through Eva's new apartment windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. She sat on her second-hand couch, a cup of tea warming her hands, while Jonas settled into the armchair across from her. The silence between them felt comfortable, almost peaceful after the chaos of Jake's final appearance. Eva studied the rim of her mug, tracing it with her finger. "I can't believe I actually stood up to him," she said softly. "For so long, I thought I wasn't strong enough." Jonas leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "You were always strong enough. You just needed to remember it." She looked around her new apartment, the bare walls waiting for pictures, the empty shelves ready to hold memories. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Really hers. "Everything's different now," she said. "Sometimes I wake up and can hardly believe how much has changed." "Good different?" Jonas asked, his voice gentle. Eva nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "Scary different. But good scary, I think." She set her mug down on the coffee table. "I'm not that scared woman at the train station anymore." "No, you're not," Jonas agreed. His eyes held a warmth that made her heart skip. The setting sun caught the tattoos on his arms, and Eva found herself wondering about the stories behind each one. She'd learned to see past them, to see the man beneath the tough exterior. "What about you?" she asked. "You've changed, too." Jonas shifted in his chair, running a hand through his beard. "Yeah, I have." He was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Being around you, it's made me think about a lot of things, about who I am, who I want to be." Eva waited, giving him space to continue. She'd learned that Jonas needed time to find his words, that his silence wasn't empty, but full of meaning. "I've decided to leave the Angels," he said finally, his voice steady but vulnerable. "Already started the process, actually." Eva's eyes widened. "Jonas, the guy I was when I joined, angry, lost, looking for somewhere to belong, that's not who I am anymore." He looked down at his hands, powerful hands that could be so gentle. "Haven't been that guy for a while now, if I'm honest." "What changed?" Eva asked softly, though part of her already knew the answer. Jonas met her eyes. "Meeting you, watching you fight your way back from darkness, it showed me there's another way, a better way." He paused, his expression open and honest. "I want to build something real, Eva. Something that isn't built on anger or fear." Eva felt tears prick at her eyes. Not sad tears, but the kind that come when your heart is too full to hold everything in. She understood exactly what he meant, about wanting something real, something true. The angels were my shield, Jonas continued, his voice growing softer. A way to keep the world at arm's length. But I don't want to live like that anymore. I want to be the kind of man who faces life head-on, who builds instead of destroys. He reached across the space between them, taking her hand in his. His touch was warm, steady, grounding. I want to build something real with you, Eva, if you'll have me. Eva stood up from the couch, her legs restless with nervous energy. I need some air. Would you walk with me? Jonas nodded, rising from his chair. Of course. The evening air was cool and crisp as they stepped outside. Street lamps flickered to life one by one, creating pools of soft light along the sidewalk. Eva hugged her arms around herself, not from cold, but from the weight of everything she was feeling. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, their footsteps falling into an easy rhythm. The neighborhood was quiet, with only the occasional car passing by and the distant sound of wind chimes. I keep thinking about Jake, Eva finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Not because I want him back, I don't, but because I'm afraid I'll never fully be free of what he did to me. Jonas listened patiently, his presence steady beside her. It's like... Eva struggled to find the right words. Like I'm carrying around this heavy backpack full of all the horrible things he said and did, and even though I know I should just put it down and walk away, I can't seem to let go. They passed a small park, where an empty swing swayed gently in the breeze. Eva stopped to watch it, remembering simpler times. You know what I think? Jonas said, his deep voice gentle. I think sometimes we hold on to our pain because it's familiar, because we're more afraid of what might happen if we let it go. Eva turned to look at him, surprised by the insight. Is that what you did? With the angels? Yeah, he admitted. For a long time. But you can't build something new while you're still clutching on to what's broken. They started walking again, and Eva felt something shift inside her, like a window being opened in a stuffy room. I don't want to be afraid anymore, she said, her voice growing stronger. I don't want Jake to have any power over me, not even in my memories. She stopped walking and turned to face Jonas fully. I want to let go. I need to let go. Then do it, Jonas encouraged softly. Right here, right now. Eva closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She imagined all the pain, all the fear, all the self-doubt that Jake had planted in her heart. She imagined gathering it all up like autumn leaves, letting the wind take them away. When she opened her eyes, they were wet with tears, but she was smiling. I'm done letting him control my life. I'm done being his victim. Jonas reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver key ring. Here, he said, holding it out to her. For your new apartment. New keys, new life. Eva took the key ring, running her finger over its smooth surface. It was such a simple thing, but it represented so much more. Independence, safety, possibility. Thank you, she whispered, and they both knew she wasn't just talking about the key ring. As they stood there under the street lamp, Eva felt the last traces of Jake's influence falling away. In its place was something new and fragile, but full of promise, like the first green shoots breaking through winter soil. She clutched the key ring tight in her hand, feeling its edges press into her palm. For the first time in years, she could see a future that wasn't shadowed by fear, a future that was hers to shape, hers to choose. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Eva's new apartment, casting warm patches of light across her desk. She sat there, surrounded by job applications and her laptop, feeling a surge of excitement she hadn't experienced in years. "I think I found it," she called out to Jonas, who was making coffee in her small kitchen. "The perfect job." Jonas appeared, in the doorway, 2 steaming mugs in his hands. He set one down next to her, the rich aroma of fresh coffee filling the air. "Yeah? Tell me about it." "It's at this small design firm downtown," Eva explained, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "They're looking for someone with fresh ideas, someone who can think outside the box." She clicked through the job listing, showing him the details. "And the best part? They encourage creativity and personal growth." Jonas leaned against the desk, studying the screen. "Sounds perfect for you." "I used to dream about doing something like this, you know?" Eva took a sip of her coffee. "Before Jake, well, before everything. I went to art school, had all these big plans." "Nothing's stopping you now," Jonas said, his voice warm with encouragement. 2 weeks later, Eva stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her blazer. Her interview outfit was simple but professional, a far cry from the baggy clothes she used to hide in. Her hands weren't shaking anymore when she applied her lipstick. The interview went better than she could have hoped. The firm's creative director, Sarah, seemed genuinely impressed with Eva's portfolio and fresh perspective. When the offer letter arrived 3 days later, Eva couldn't stop smiling. Meanwhile, Jonas had been busy too. He'd found a small garage space on the edge of town, perfect for his motorcycle repair shop. The building needed work, but Jonas saw its potential. "It's not much," he said as he showed Eva around the space. Tools were scattered everywhere, and the concrete floor was stained with old oil marks. "But it's a start." Eva walked through the garage, running her hand along the weathered walls. "It's perfect," she said. "It just needs some love." She pulled out her sketchbook, a habit she'd recently rediscovered, and started drawing. "Have you thought about a logo?" Jonas watched her sketch, amazed at how quickly her hands moved across the paper. "Not really. Never been much for that artistic stuff." "Well, lucky for you," Eva grinned. "You know someone who is." She showed him her rough sketch, a stylized motorcycle wrapped in clean, bold lines that somehow captured both strength and elegance. "That's," Jonas stared at the drawing. "That's exactly what I wanted but couldn't put into words." Eva felt a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just pride in her work. It was the joy of using her talents again, of creating something meaningful. "We could add your nickname here," she said, pointing to the design. "Bear's Custom Repairs has a nice ring to it." Jonas wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "You're amazing, you know that?" Eva leaned into him, feeling safe and strong all at once. This wasn't the desperate clinging she'd known with Jake. This was different. This was 2 people standing on their own feet, choosing to walk together. She looked around the garage again, seeing not what it was, but what it could become. Just like her, just like Jonas, it was a work in progress. And that was exactly as it should be. Eva stared at her computer screen, her eyes burning from exhaustion. The design project she was working on just wasn't coming together. She'd been at it for hours, but something felt off. Frustration bubbled up inside her chest, and she recognized the familiar tightness that came with it. "Deep breaths," she whispered to herself, pushing back from her desk. The afternoon sun filtered through her office window, reminding her that she'd barely moved all day. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jonas. "Rough day?" He always seemed to know. Eva smiled despite her mood and typed back. "How could you tell?" "You missed our lunch call. First time since you started the job." Eva's heart sank. She had completely forgotten. These moments of forgetfulness still triggered waves of guilt, old habits from her time with Jake, when forgetting anything meant consequences. She forced herself to remember where she was now and who she was with. Her phone rang, and Jonas's gruff voice came through. "Talk to me." Eva's voice caught. "I thought I was past all this. The anxiety, the self-doubt. But today, everything feels wrong. My designs look amateur, and I keep second-guessing every decision." "Recovery ain't a straight line, Ava," Jonas said softly. "You know that better than anyone." She did know. Her therapist had said the same thing countless times. Some days were harder than others, and that was okay. It didn't mean she was failing or sliding backward. "Want to get out of there?" Jonas asked. "I just finished up at the shop. We could grab dinner, maybe watch the sunset at Miller's Point?" Ava looked at her messy desk, at the project that wasn't going anywhere. "Yes," she said. "I'd like that." An hour later, they sat on the hood of Jonas's truck at Miller's Point, sharing a pizza and watching the sky turn brilliant shades of orange and pink. The spring air was cool, but not cold, and Eva felt the day's tension slowly melting away. "I used to be scared of days like this," she admitted, picking at a piece of pepperoni. "The bad days, I thought they meant I wasn't really getting better." Jonas shifted beside her, his solid presence reassuring. "And now? Now I know they're just days. They come and go." She turned to look at him, taking in his weathered face, the kindness in his eyes. "Having you here helps. Not because you fix things for me, but because you remind me that I'm strong enough to handle it myself." Jonas smiled, the expression softening his usually stern features. "You've always been strong, Ava. You just forgot for a while." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun continued its descent, painting the sky in deeper shades of red and purple. Ava leaned against Jonas's shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. In moments like this, she could truly appreciate how far they'd both come. The last rays of sunlight caught the silver in Jonas's beard, and Ava felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. Bad days would come and go, but they couldn't shake the foundation she'd built. She had her work, her independence, and a love that supported rather than confined her. As darkness began to creep in around them, they remained still, content to share this quiet moment together. The city lights began to twinkle below, and a cool breeze carried the scent of spring flowers up from the valley. Ava traced her finger along the rim of her coffee mug, watching the steam rise in delicate swirls. The local diner had become their regular spot for Sunday morning breakfast, its worn leather booths and endless coffee refills offering a comfortable familiarity. Jonas sat across from her, his large frame somehow fitting perfectly in the small space. He'd been unusually quiet this morning, fiddling with his phone more than usual. Eva could tell something was on his mind. "So," he finally said, putting his phone face down on the table. "I've been thinking." Eva raised an eyebrow. "That sounds dangerous." He chuckled, the sound warm and deep. "Maybe. But hear me out." He pulled out a brochure from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. "What do you think about taking some time off? Really off?" Ava picked up the glossy paper, her eyes widening as she took in pictures of crystal-clear waters and white sandy beaches. "The Caribbean?" "You mentioned once that you'd never seen the ocean," Jonas said, his voice softening. "And after everything that's happened, everything you've accomplished, I thought maybe it's time for something completely different." Eva's heart fluttered. The idea of leaving everything behind, even temporarily, both thrilled and terrified her. "I don't know, Jonas. My work will still be there when we get back," he finished gently. You've built something solid here, Ava. It's not going to disappear if you take a break. She looked down at the brochure again, letting herself imagine it. Warm sun on her skin, the sound of waves, no deadlines or pressure. Just peace and possibility. When were you thinking? She asked, trying to keep her voice casual despite the excitement building in her chest. Jonas's eyes lit up. 2 weeks from now. I've already checked with your boss. She thinks it's a great idea. Said you've got vacation time piling up. You talked to Sarah? Ava laughed, shaking her head. You've really thought this through, haven't you? Someone's got to look out for you when you forget to look out for yourself, he teased, reaching across the table to take her hand. What do you say? Ready for an adventure? Ava squeezed his hand, feeling the familiar calluses under her fingers. A year ago, she would have said no immediately, too afraid to step out of her carefully constructed safety zone. But now... Yes, she said, surprising herself with how sure she felt. Let's do it. Jonas's smile was worth every ounce of anxiety the decision brought. They spent the next hour huddled over his phone, booking flights and choosing a resort. Ava felt lighter with each detail they settled, as if the mere act of planning something positive was healing in itself. Look at this, Jonas said, showing her a picture of their chosen resort. Private beach, spa services, even cooking classes if you want them. Ava leaned closer, taking in the details. It looks perfect. She paused, a thought occurring to her. You know, I don't even own a swimsuit. Well then, Jonas said, standing and offering his hand. I guess we've got some shopping to do. They left the diner hand in hand, stepping into the bright morning sunlight. Ava felt a surge of gratitude for how far they'd come, for the trust they'd built, for the way Jonas knew exactly when she needed a push toward something new. As they walked to his truck, Ava already had her phone out, making a list of things they'd need for the trip. Sunscreen, beach clothes, a new camera to capture everything. Each item she added felt like another step toward this new adventure, another choice to embrace joy instead of fear. Eva pressed her face against the airplane window, watching fluffy clouds drift by beneath them. The gentle hum of the engines and Jonas's steady presence beside her created a bubble of calm she'd never experienced before. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this light, this free. First time flying? Jonas asked, his voice low and warm. She shook her head. No, but it's been years. The last time was... She trailed off, remembering a business trip with Jake that had ended in tears and accusations. But now, those memories felt distant, like watching scenes from someone else's life. Jonas squeezed her hand. Hey, you okay? Actually, yes, Eva said, realizing it was true. More than okay. The flight attendant stopped by with drinks, and Eva accepted a ginger ale. She watched the bubbles rise to the surface, thinking about how far she'd come. A year ago, she would have second-guessed every decision, worried about every detail. Now she was flying to a tropical island with a man who made her feel safe and valued. They landed as the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The air that hit them as they stepped off the plane was warm and heavy with humidity. Eva closed her eyes and breathed in deeply, taking in the unfamiliar scents of tropical flowers and ocean air. Welcome to paradise, Jonas said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. They collected their luggage and found their rental car, a small convertible that made Eva laugh when she saw it. Really? You in this tiny thing? Jonas grinned, somehow folding his large frame into the driver's seat. What can I say? I like to mix things up. The drive to their first stop, a small coastal town, was like something out of a dream. Palm trees lined the winding roads, and glimpses of the ocean appeared between the buildings. Ava let her hand drift in the warm air outside the car, feeling completely present in the moment. They decided to take their time getting to the resort, exploring the island first. Their first night would be spent in a small inn that Jonas had found, its whitewashed walls glowing in the fading light as they pulled up. "This is beautiful," Ava breathed, taking in the flowering vines that climbed the walls and the string lights that twinkled in the courtyard. The innkeeper, an older woman with kind eyes, showed them to their room. It was simple but charming, with a balcony that overlooked the ocean. Ava stepped out onto it while Jonas brought in their bags, letting the sound of the waves wash over her. "Hungry?" Jonas asked, joining her. The innkeeper recommended a place just down the beach. They walked hand in hand along the shore, shoes off and feet in the warm sand. The restaurant turned out to be a small open-air cafe, lit by candles and the stars above. The tables were set right on the beach, and they could hear the waves as they ate fresh seafood and sipped cold drinks. "I can't believe we're really here," Ava said, looking out at the moonlit water. Jonas reached across the table, taking her hand. "Believe it. You deserve this, Ava. All of it." She looked at their joined hands, then up at his face, seeing nothing but sincerity and warmth in his eyes. The fears and doubts that had followed her for so long seemed to dissolve into the salty air. Here, thousands of miles from home, she finally felt like she could truly be herself. Not the person Jake had tried to make her into, not the victim she'd been, but simply Eva. The taxi pulled up to Eva's apartment building, and she felt different stepping out. Lighter somehow, as if she'd left more than just her luggage behind on that island. Jonas grabbed their bags from the trunk, while Eva fumbled for her keys, still operating on island time. "Home sweet home," she said, pushing open her apartment door. The familiar sight of her living room brought a smile to her face. Everything was exactly as they'd left it, but she wasn't the same person who had locked up 2 weeks ago. Jonas set their bags down and stretched his tall frame. "Want some coffee? I could use a cup after that flight." "Please," Eva said, sinking into her comfortable couch. She watched as Jonas moved around her kitchen with familiar ease, the coffee maker gurgling to life under his touch. The morning sun streamed through her windows, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. Eva pulled her legs up under her, thinking about how natural it felt to have Jonas here, how right it seemed when he handed her a steaming mug and settled beside her. "I've been thinking," Jonas said, his voice gentle but sure. "About us, about the future." Eva's heart did a little skip. "Me too. Actually, I did a lot of thinking on that beach." "Yeah?" He turned to face her fully, those kind eyes focused entirely on her. "Care to share?" Eva set her coffee down and took a deep breath. "Being away like that, seeing how good we are together, it made me realize I don't want to go back to how things were before. Living separately, trying to fit our lives together in these stolen moments." Jonas's face softened. "I know what you mean. Walking on that beach with you every morning, having breakfast together, falling asleep to the sound of the waves. It felt right." "It did," Eva agreed, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "And coming back here, I don't want to say goodbye at the end of each day anymore." Jonas reached for her hand, his larger one enveloping hers completely. "What if we didn't have to?" "What do you mean?" "What if we looked for a place together?" His thumb traced circles on her palm. "Something that's ours from the start. No ghosts, no baggage, just us." Eva felt tears prick at her corners of her eyes, but they were happy ones. "You want to buy a house together?" "I do." Jonas's voice was firm, certain. I want a garage where I can work on bikes, and you can have that art studio you've been talking about. Maybe a little garden where you can plant those flowers you loved so much on the island." Eva could see it in her mind's eye, a place that belonged to both of them, filled with sunlight and possibility. "That sounds perfect." "Yeah?" Jonas's smile was bright enough to light up the room. "Yeah." Eva squeezed his hand. "Let's do it. Let's find our home." They spent the next hour huddled over Jonas's laptop, looking at listings in different neighborhoods. Eva pointed out houses with character, while Jonas focused on practicality. Good bones, solid foundations. Somehow it felt like they were building more than just plans for a house. They were laying the groundwork for their future, brick by careful brick. "This one," Eva said, pointing to a craftsman-style house with a wraparound porch. "It even has that detached garage you wanted." Jonas leaned in closer, his shoulder pressing against hers. "It's in our price range, too. Want to see it?" Eva nodded, her heart full of hope and possibilities. "Let's call the agent." Morning sunlight streamed through the bay windows of their new craftsman home, casting warm patterns across the hardwood floors. Eva stood in the middle of their living room, surrounded by moving boxes, breathing in the fresh possibilities that came with new beginnings. "Coffee's ready," Jonas called from the kitchen. The familiar aroma wafted through their home. Their home, Eva thought with a smile. She still couldn't quite believe it. She made her way to the kitchen, where Jonas was arranging mugs on the counter they'd picked out together. The morning light caught his face, softening his rugged features. He looked different here, more at peace than she'd ever seen him. "First breakfast in our new home," Eva said, accepting the steaming mug he offered. "Feels kind of surreal, doesn't it?" Jonas wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. "Good surreal, though." Through the kitchen window, Eva could see the garden they'd started planning. Right now, it was just turned earth and possibility, but she could already picture the flowers that would bloom there come spring. Jonas had surprised her by suggesting they plant lavender. He'd remembered how much she loved the scent. "The garage is perfect," Jonas said, his eyes lighting up. "Once I get my tools set up, I can start working on that old Harley we found." Eva smiled, remembering how excited he'd been when they'd discovered the vintage motorcycle at a local sale. "And I can finally set up my art studio upstairs. That room has the best natural light I've ever seen." They moved to the porch, settling into the wooden swing they'd installed yesterday. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. Their nearest neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, had already brought over a welcome basket filled with homemade cookies and garden-fresh vegetables. "Remember when we first looked at this place?" Eva asked, leaning her head against Jonas's shoulder. "How nervous I was about making such a big commitment." Jonas's chest rumbled with a soft laugh. "You kept asking if we were crazy to move so fast." "Were we?" "Nah." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Sometimes you just know when something's right." Eva closed her eyes, letting the gentle motion of the swing soothe her. The morning air was crisp with autumn's approach, but Jonas's warmth beside her kept any chill at bay. In the distance, a wind chime tinkled softly, another housewarming gift, this one from Molly. "I was thinking," Jonas said, his voice thoughtful, "maybe we could host Thanksgiving this year, our first holiday in the new house." Eva's heart swelled at the suggestion. The idea of filling their home with friends and family, of creating new memories in this space they'd chosen together, felt exactly right. "I'd love that." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as their new neighborhood came to life. A jogger waved as she passed, and a few houses down, someone was walking their dog. It all felt so wonderfully normal, so far removed from the fear and uncertainty that had dominated Eva's life not so long ago. I never thought I'd have this, Eva admitted softly. After everything with Jake, I didn't think I deserved it. Jonas tightened his arm around her. You deserve every bit of happiness, sweetheart. And then some. Eva looked up at their house, their home, with its welcoming porch and warm wooden details. She thought about the life they were building together, about the strength they'd found in each other. Every step of their journey, even the painful ones, had led them here. As the afternoon sun began its descent, Eva and Jonas made their way to the wooden deck overlooking their backyard. The space wasn't huge, but it was theirs, a patch of earth where they could plant their dreams and watch them grow. Jonas's large hand enveloped Eva's smaller one as they settled into the matching Adirondack chairs they'd restored together. The wooden slats still smelled faintly of fresh paint, a soft blue that reminded Eva of summer skies. Look at what we built, Eva said softly, taking in the view. Their yard wasn't fancy, just a modest lawn with newly planted saplings along the fence line. But to her, it was perfect. A bird feeder hung from the maple tree, drawing cheerful chickadees that darted back and forth. Jonas squeezed her hand. We did good, didn't we? Eva nodded, feeling the peace settle around them like a warm blanket. The late afternoon light painted everything in soft gold, making even the simplest things seem magical. The wind chime catching the breeze, the flower beds they'd just finished mulching, the small stone path they'd laid together. Sometimes I think about where we started, Jonas said, his voice thoughtful. Me with the angels, you with Jake. He shook his head. Feels like a lifetime ago. Eva turned to look at him, studying the face she'd grown to love so deeply. The hardness that had once defined his features had softened, though his strength remained. His eyes, once guarded, now held warmth and peace. We both had to walk through some dark places to get here, she agreed. But maybe that's what makes this so special. We know exactly what we're grateful for. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of the lavender they'd planted along the deck. Eva closed her eyes, savoring the moment. The memories of fear and pain that had once consumed her thoughts had faded to distant echoes. In their place was this, the solid warmth of Jonas's hand in hers, the quiet satisfaction of building a life together. You know what I love most about this place? Jonas asked, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. What's that? It's got no ghosts, he said simply. No old memories, no baggage. Just us, making something new. Eva understood exactly what he meant. Every corner of their home held only the memories they'd chosen to create together. Laughter, love, and healing. The darkness of their past couldn't reach them here. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the shadows lengthen across their yard. A family of rabbits had made their home under the hedge, and they emerged now, hopping cautiously across the grass. Eva smiled, remembering how Jonas had grumbled about them eating his vegetable garden, but had still put out carrots for them when he thought she wasn't looking. We're going to be happy here, Eva said. And it wasn't a question or a hope. It was a simple statement of truth. Jonas lifted their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. We already are, sweetheart. We already are. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of pink and gold, a beautiful backdrop to their peaceful moment. Eva felt the rightness of it all settle deep in her bones. This was where they belonged, together, stronger for everything they'd overcome. They'd both walked through fire to get here, but they'd emerged not just surviving, but thriving. Their past had shaped them, but no longer defined them. Instead, it had forged them into something stronger, something unbreakable. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story. and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.